All right, week 2 of Made for Monday. And so we wanted to have Shellie on. So first of all, Shellie, what do you do here at Community so people know if they don't get to interact with you a lot?
I am the student ministry director, so I'm with our junior high and high schoolers.
I love it. And Shellie just has a vision to grow what's happening at both campuses. Her team has grown this year. Kids are doing small groups. We have tons of students out on Wednesday night. Sunday morning, we just kicked off a new group at Foxworthy. We got to go up and spend some time with Shellie at Hume this summer, and you had 60 students up there.
Yes.
And we're hoping to take more this next year to have that
90
camp
this
experience.
year.
90, is that the number
90's
for
the
reals? We have
number
90
for
spaces?
real, yeah.
Okay, we got to take them.
It's going to be great.
So not only, Shellie, are you directing all our student ministries, and God has really called you into more full-time ministry the last few years, but you have been a business owner. So people don't know your story. So you're perfect to have this conversation with about work as worship.
Yeah.
And so tell people what your business is as you had and that you have currently, and you're still doing some of that while also working for the church.
Yeah, so I've been a full-time hairdresser since I was 18 years old, and I opened my shop, The Painted Lady Salon, in downtown San Jose 9 years ago. So full-time hairdressing, full-time ministry, and shop owning is a big part of all the things, for sure.
So your salon is a cool spot. We've actually had team meetings there, right close to SAP Center. So, and your spiritual journey has kind of is overlapped with your business ownership journey. So I just want to have you share about this. Is like for the first couple of years that you led your business, you weren't in a place where you were following Jesus, and then God calls you back to Him in a powerful way.
Yeah.
And so kind of give us, what does that look like to be on both sides of that, and just share some of your experience, because we have people who are working all over the valley.
Yeah. I mean, I've always believed in God. And so I feel like some of the just principles in this series have applied to things that I've done naturally my whole life. As far as just like valuing people and being vulnerable and some of the things that we talked about, I'm like, oh, I did that before I was following Jesus. But once I started really giving my life to God, which was inspired by my son, right? Granger changed my whole life. Then I just wanted to take my employees and my clients along with me, which is a challenge in the Bay Area for sure. And so just, a lot has changed in the ways that I know serving has changed my life even before following Jesus. And so I instantly wanted my employees to be serving with me, or serving even the people that are there in the way that we do business. And so that kind of stuff changed a ton. And then, of course,
talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
So you had people who are working in the salon for you. They've seen you, in a sense, in a stage of life where you weren't really following Jesus, but still vulnerable. So they knew what was going on in your life.
Right.
And then you say, I'm going to choose to follow Jesus. And you knew what that meant for you to really surrender to Jesus.
Right.
It was life-changing for you. And I remember some of that journey. And then they're watching this, seeing your vulnerability. You're wanting to move your shop, right? Is going to follow your direction. You're the business owner. What did that create for your employees? Because for them, that tension, did you have some who were on board, some who fought? What did that look like? I mean, in reality.
It's interesting because I was like the salon mom, and so I think the girls, they loved me. And I think they were willing to follow those things. I think about now, as a new Christian, I was like, we're going to open this meeting with prayer, which is not usual, right? That's vulnerability right there. And so I would pray before our meetings, and, you have so many walks of life. And I mean, I believe we're walking in the right way, but maybe I should have been a little more respectful to that. I don't know, but I felt passionate about taking these people on a journey with me. I was the salon mom, so I was going to give the same kinds of things that I would want my mom to give me, And so I think what that changed was just them feeling the push, which causes tension, right? Anytime someone is giving you a push, I believe that's God inspired, not me inspired. And that creates tension because until people are ready, they're just not ready, right? And so I definitely felt like there was some tension there. And then fast forward to a few years later, God closed down my shop for 18 months during COVID. And that was some of the hardest times of my life where you think I was like, God, this is good. And you stepped in and you're loving me. And then he's like, all right, but how are you going to do it now? Right? And I'm like, whoa. So my life changed and I just had to really trust God in some of the hardest times in my life. And I feel like that disconnect where I was able to engage and be vulnerable with them and keep them connected to what I was doing, whether they believed it or not, and show them some of the fruits of serving and loving people well. When that disconnect happened, I mean, I pretty much had a full walkout, which I really do attribute to some of bringing the truth about Jesus to my shop.
Yeah. So there's a tension, right? As the business owner, you get to direct your business where you want. It might be different for an employee, but there's a spiritual tension because they see you walking with Jesus. They see your life change. They see you outwardly what you do, how you're raising your son. And then you're right. And then COVID comes along. That changed everything. So, as a business owner, like you said, you might have approached that differently than now with a little more maturity than you did then.
What it is.
But you're right. We have to understand that when we're going to stand for Jesus, there's a spiritual tension in people's lives.
Absolutely.
And like you said, it's not necessarily you bringing it in. They feel that at times.
Yeah.
And we have to be okay with some of that people are have a spiritual journey too. And the Holy Spirit might be working on some of that. I want to hit on something you said. You went through COVID as a business owner. What did that look like for your faith? You're like, oh, it's going well. God's blessing. Business is going well. It's growing. And then everything shut down, right? Obviously, a hair salon was one of those that definitely like, man, you're not doing people's hair.
Yeah.
How did that force you to trust in the Lord? Did that really stretch your faith?
I mean, that's really where everything changed for me because I jumped into doing ministry when I had the time, right? And so God just really called me out of what I was doing and into something new. And so I'm kind of still in that, honestly. I feel like things are still very different at my shop. I've chosen not to rebuild that, and I have to trust God with the finances of that because the bills are big, right? But every month, because I feel like I'm following God and what He wants for me, He gives me exactly what I need. And I just feel like in that way, it has just let me know how much God loves me and how He is making a way for me, even when it's hard. And honestly, I'm probably working too much right now, but He has me in this season where He's like, just let me be your strength. Because right now is grind time and not every minute of your life is going to be like that. But in this season, even though it's hard, you got me. And it's like we become even more friends and even more intimate with me having to say like, okay, God, I need you for everything, So it's hard. But it's cool.
I've really watched it as we've prayed with you the last few years as God's opened the door for you to do ministry, but hasn't fully called you away from the salon or that business. And I love it. It gives, to me, I know every week you're with people who are not following Jesus, right? You're a light, you're connected. I know you're praying through that. So, I know, like you said, you're a hard worker, and I know you're willing to grind. That's what makes you an incredible part of this team and the way you serve people.
Thank you.
I'm going to go backwards just a little bit.
Okay.
So where did you get your work ethic from? Like, where do you think that came from, like, early on? Because I just have seen that in you, and I think it's a good thing for our church and for people to see.
You're going to make me cry.
That was not my intention, but I think it's good for people to recognize or look back sometimes.
I think a lot about generational things that get passed down, and I feel like it's exactly that. My mom and dad have both given their life to their family and to their work. My dad takes something like mufflers, and he like you get so much more with my dad when you walk into his muffler shop.
Yeah.
And he's just like loving on people. And it's funny because my dad will be like, you need to tell him like this. And I'm like, Dad, it's so much different coming my dad is a big man, my dad, right? And like, so I feel like my dad just has this way of like loving people well when they come into his shop, not sacrificing who he is as a person when he is in the world, and also just working so hard. My dad's always been a hard worker. My mom's always been a hard worker. My grandma and my grandpa are hard workers, and I think it just comes from like a generational pass down, of just hard workers and people that have not necessarily had it handed to them, but are willing to work hard for it.
I see that in your family. And I think as we say this, as you said, man, you're in a season where you're working a lot. We've been talking lately about, okay, how do you rest? How do we honor Sabbath? Like, it's okay to work hard, and work is worship, and we should work hard. But God also lines up this rhythm in our life for rest, right? And with our team, we're always working on that as well. But it's amazing. I partly asked you that question because I've walked into your dad's muffler shop multiple times, sometimes to get my car service, sometimes just to go by and see him. I remember the first time I ever met him was at his shop. Somebody took me by there to meet him.
Yeah.
And every time I go, almost every time I'm there, he shares about somebody he's talked about with Jesus, that he's had a spiritual conversation with.
Yeah.
And so going off of that, and there's that history in your family, and now the way you do business and your husband, Ben, the way you guys do business speaks into Granger's life and into other people in our church. What are some things that you do right now, right? You still have these clients that come that have their hair done, that you've had some of them for years and years, that you have a relationship with. What do you do to love your clients well as if you're working for the Lord? What does that look like for you and the painted lady right now?
It's interesting because this series has just inspired me so much to honestly stay in it. I don't know what that looks like or what God has in my future, but just to be able to be in the world and not be of the world, and that just looks a lot different. And it honestly, through my clients, I learn a lot about just God, he's doing this or he's doing that, or, their words will sound different than they used to. When they come out, it's I can recognize them and I can kind of steer them in a way that brings them back to a place that I know as truth. And so now to love on my clients, I still am vulnerable. My stories look a lot different.
Yeah.
When I was doing my thing, my stories were good. And I always felt like if somebody can hear my story and they can be different from it, and I'll still do that. I'll pull out my old stories and be like, check it out. There's not a place that you have been that I haven't been, and I'm willing to tell you about it. And I think that that's hard for people to do, to be vulnerable like that. And I've just always been a person that's willing to, put myself out there in that way. And if someone can hear my story and it resonates with them, and sometimes I wasn't bringing people on a good journey, but now I feel like I can just tell people what God's doing in my life in a very simple way. And it makes them see wow, things have really changed for her. And sometimes that creates some tension. And sometimes it's something that exactly what the person needs to hear. And it's not preaching to them. It's not breaking out my Bible or telling them a verse unless God gives it to me. But sometimes it's just silently loving on them and giving them really good customer service and making sure I still, after 22 years, I try to greet every client, offer them a drink, do certain things that make them feel good. And we do a lot of that stuff here with our hospitality and our teams, right? Each element needs to be done well. And I try to not forget the elements. And then that allows me these little avenues to just give them nuggets that maybe sound different than someone else would give them. Or sometimes if I'm really feeling that tension, when I'm shampooing their hair, I'm just praying for them.
Yeah.
I'm just praying over them that God would step into their life, that he would do something different, or a lot of times, politics will come up in my chair, which is not supposed to come up. Religion and politics, those are the things you avoid, but somehow they just they know how I feel. So they'll put it on me, right? And so I always just try to say that's not how I feel. That's not what I'm about. That's not what I've heard. Here's what I've heard. Or just realign things with some truth that the world has it wrong. The Bible tells us that, right? And people generally have it wrong unless they get it right. And so I just try to give them little things that'll just help them see something different, or even change the way that they feel about Christians in general. The name is bad, but it's not all caused from us, right? Some people have done some things that have maybe gave anything you talk about. But I feel we have an opportunity in our workplace to just show people something different without always having to say something. And I try to do that. I try to just do something different.
I think you said a couple of great things there. Sometimes you'll just pray over these people in your chair.
Yeah.
If you're going into a meeting, it's okay for you to pray over your clients. It's okay to pray for the success of the business, to ask God to give you wisdom and direction. I had that happen this week. I'm praying in the morning about something here at Community Christian. And I'm like, God, I don't know what to bring to this meeting, and I need direction. I felt like God gave me something, and I took it to the meeting, and I wasn't sure how it would be received. And I was blown away. And I'm like, I think this is a good thing for community, and the conversation I'm having with this other person, a good thing for them. And I was like, that's a God-given thing. Invite God into the business meetings and things you're doing. And again, because of your vulnerability and because you're in the salon, there's certain conversations that open up and they know you, right? And like you said, sometimes it creates a tension because you're going to see differently than that other person. But it's okay for you to say, hey, I'm viewing the world through this lens, and to do it in a way that they feel loved and cared for, and it's hospitable, right? So many things that we try and do with excellence here, we do it at Community Christian because we're working as unto the Lord. And that's the same. I know that's the way you do your business. It's the way you run an event. It's the way you want to do things for youth, because we're doing it as unto the Lord. So the same is true for those of you who are working or running a business or managing people. There's something that happens, right? As you've seen in your business, when you started following Jesus, it was a shift. And maybe you didn't know how to do all of that. And maybe you would do some of that a little bit different, but it should look different when we're following Jesus.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. I just want to say too, I've always felt like I've never had a boss, right? So
yeah, I've always
done my own thing. And so I would kind of joke like God's my boss. Yeah. And we touched on that this week with Made for Mondays, right? Like work, like God is your boss. But God also gave me an awesome boss. And so it's just an honor and a privilege to follow you and to learn from you, and for you to just be able to speak life into us, because that's what you do. And I honestly think that stuff just overflows onto my Monday. And it's like, it's always a blessing to just come from here. And I love to like shoot you a text or just say something nice to you. And it's not because I feel that I need to or that you don't get it, but it's sometimes I think like the best leaders and the people that are maybe elevated to a different level, they don't get that because people assume that they get it. And so there's always just little things that you're doing to speak life into me and into our team, and the way that you line things up that really makes it more effective in the workplace. So I think that helps a lot. And I can see that even if it's like a hard work time, how God's like, here, I gave you this, and I gave you this team, and I gave you this boss to help teach you that next level. And it encourages me even in the salon. So it's awesome.
I didn't pay her to say that, by the way.
You didn't.
I didn't know you were going to go there. And I so appreciate it. And I want people to know everything you just said, like you live out in the way that you support me and our leadership, and you do often on a Sunday afternoon, right? Because there's a lot we do on Sundays to say, hey, I saw this go well, or thanks for leading in this way. And it is so encouraging. And I want the culture that we're building here, the team that we have that works hard, also knows how to rest appropriately, but works hard, do things with excellence, because we are working as unto the Lord at this thing called Community Christian. And I want it to be an example for our business owners, people who are working all over this valley, of what it can look like, or how we want them to enter into their workspaces, right? And as a church, as leaders in our church, we have to do that. And so let me just say, like, if you work for somebody, if you work for a business owner, you have a manager, like, your encouragement to them matters, because my team so often does that. And this summer, when I took extra time off, I cannot tell you how many times the team said, I went to ask a question, or, hey, is this covered, or whatever? And they're like, hey, we got it. Right. You rest, spend time with your family. Like, it showed so much respect for me and my position and wanting good things for me, and just how big of a deal it is to have a team like that. So if you're on somebody's team, man, you leading from below, like Shellie does with me, lifting them up, encourage them, pointing out the things they do well, because they too often just hear the complaints. That makes a big difference. And
this culture that we live in, that's the thing, is like you said this also, like a lot of times the employer thinks that they're like, boss is working for them. And it's like, it's cool to be different than that. It's cool for someone to be like, you know what? Because of that person, I can rest. And I know that because I'm a boss. I'm a boss. Even if I don't have any employees, I'm a boss. And I know what that would mean to have someone on my team that's like that. We all have the opportunity to be that on someone's team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool.
Oh, man. Shellie, thanks for the time.
Absolutely.
Hey, we hope this series is having an impact on you. Man, really, if we did all of our work as unto Jesus, the spiritual landscape of this valley, it looks different. And so many of you are already doing that. Keep doing that. Some of you, God is shifting your mindset, and he's going to bring you something new with your work this year.
Amen.